You might have noticed that pretty much the entire internet was down yesterday. Yeah, like the whole thing. I couldn't even order food for my cat here. It was nuts. Everything from Snapchat to Netflix to DoorDash to McDonald's was entirely down. How does everything go down at once? Well, AWS. So much of the web is powered by AWS, and so many services and apps we rely on every day are all based out of us-east-1 from Amazon. So if that goes down, everything goes down. Even if my cat wants to be in my face. Be thankful this guy's not your IT admin. There's a good chance you've seen this one covered in many different places by now. There are so many sources and other great creators and YouTubers that have broken down the depth of what happened here and why it happened. Everything from DNS to DynamoDB to multi-region failures, etc. But I want to talk about this for a very different reason. I want to talk about this because I saw this post from Elizabeth Warren. And I'm from Elizabeth Warren State, Massachusetts. Normally, I try to not talk about politics here, and I'm going to do my best to not make this political, but I want to explain why the current state of the cloud is actually a really good thing, why it's awesome that we have services like AWS, GCP, and Azure to rely on, and why the idea of breaking these companies up after today's outage is a really, really, really bad idea. All of that said, someone's got to pay for this cat's food, so we're going to take a quick break for today's sponsor, and then we'll dive right in. Your engineers are really fast. Your GitHub CI probably isn't, at least unless you're using today's sponsor, Blacksmith. These guys really get GitHub CI in actions better than almost anyone I've talked to in my life. I just got back from one of their events, and I had such a good time chatting with these guys. The thing I didn't realize until recently is that they're not just the best, cheapest alternative to GitHub Actions that's literally one line of code. Like, that's enough of a reason to use it, right? But where it gets really fun is the observability stuff. As you guys know, as I complain about a lot, GitHub doesn't really improve their platform. The fact that GitHub Actions still work the exact same way they have for like almost 10 years now is insulting. There's no way to see how high your failure rates are, where things are failing in the pipeline, and just to get like an overview of your actual work. You just scroll through a list of failed or past jobs. Useless. I mean, actual observability into your CI is unbelievable. And the more I've heard people moving over to Blacksmith, the more I've been hearing them say this is their favorite part. It's so much easier to figure out why things are failing, sort through your logs, fix failing tests, and so much more. If you're like me and you've been shipping way more code lately, Blacksmith's going to make your life significantly easier. It's free to get started, it's way faster than GitHub, and it's cheaper overall too. It's really hard to go wrong with Blacksmith, and if you don't believe me, check them out now at soydev.link/blacksmith. Here are the 3 key things I want to focus on for this video. Real quick overview of why it happened. Then we're going to go into why you should still use AWS despite this. And then we'll wrap up with my response to that Elizabeth Warren post, why I think it's stupid to break up AWS. So let's start with why it happened. There's a lot of varying coverage. I think that this article from Register is one of the better options. The TLDR is that there was a DNS issue through Dynamo that caused this first layer of failures. US East has multiple redundant data centers, but there's an abstraction on top to route the traffic to those data centers. In that abstraction layer, that DNS zone failed. According to Amazon themselves, AWS experienced increased error rates on AWS services in us-east-1, which impacted Amazon.com and Amazon subsidiaries, as well as AWS support operations. This was between 11:49 p.m. on the 19th and 2:24 a.m. on the 20th. I was out partying at TwitchCon, which is really funny because my bed would have woken me up otherwise. I was sleeping. It was 2 a.m.-ish, and I was alerted about the issue because my internet mattress, which I love, shout out 8 Sleep, was warm, which led me to opening the app. And the app for his 8 Sleep was having issues because of the AWS outage, and he couldn't change the temperature of his bed. Totally not a problem I've had before. Definitely not a thing I've experienced in the past. By the way, I do have an affiliate link if you want to sleep better than you've ever slept. soydev.link/8sleep. Link in the description. Sounds insane, but having water-cooled bed that changes temperature throughout the night is actually really nice. I bought it to make fun of it, and now it's like my favorite thing in the world. I missed it dearly during my trip. So that was when the outage happened, late at night. The cause of this event was a DNS resolution issue for the regional DynamoDB service endpoints. It was mitigated by 2:24 a.m. After this was resolved, AWS services began recovering, but a small subset of internal subsystems continued to be impaired. They are still investigating what caused this second layer of things that meant the outage was continuing. It took until 3:01 p.m. for all things to be properly, fully restored. There's a lot of layers to why that second set of failures happened. It's probably a combination of all the work that was put off due to the fact that the outage was occurring, all the lambdas that were queued, all of the work in SQS, all the different things people do on AWS. It probably like thundering herded itself into death over and over again, some amount. But we'll wait till we have a more thorough update from Amazon to be confident on that. There are also claims that this is a result of the brain drain as more and more quality people from Amazon and AWS have been leaving, and now the best engineers aren't there, and who's left might not remember how DNS works. As we know, it's always DNS. Yeah. So that's the TLDR of the why it happened. Engineers everywhere pretending to monitor the situation while refreshing the AWS status page. This was so real. This was us for T3 chat, which, yes, was down. It's funny because we were not in US East until I moved to Convex. So technically, this is once again Convex causing me problems, as silly as that is. Convex is not the problem at all. They made the right choice here. Also, Hetzner trying to get dunks and somebody who I have blocked as the starting points. Very annoying because, like, yes, Vercel was down like everything else is. Yeah, I guess this is a good transition into step 2. First off, thank you, Sam, for replying to this well. I love Sam. If you don't know him, he makes incredible articles about all sorts of different stuff. He did the load balancing article that we did a video about. He did the retries one and the queuing one. So many great articles. I highly recommend checking his stuff out. This is a good post. You're not down today, but one day you will be. You work under the same constraints everyone else does. You know how stressful it is when it happens to you. Be better. Yes. Betting on someone else doesn't make the problem go away. It's yet another bet. Every additional layer of bets does make things riskier. So the fact that for me, there is AWS as like layer 1. So we have AWS, us-east-1. And then for my database, I have Convex as a layer. But even Convex is an abstraction on top of planet-scale Metal. To be truthful, Metal is very separated from AWS. It is in the same regions, but they are renting shelf space and like racks that they put their own hardware into. So they're as much to the side here as they are like another layer. I know a lot of people who are on PlanetScale had no issues despite the fact that AWS was shitting itself. So this is my stack. So now if any piece here fails, T3 chat on top is a tiny little box, is screwed. And when you add more layers, you do potentially increase the surface area for problems to happen. But there are certain ones like PlanetScale Metal that tend to increase reliability rather than decrease it. But that leads us to a question. Does using the same servers as Amazon increase or decrease risk? The fact that people are currently unironically saying that it is riskier to use Amazon servers than it is to use some random company hosting one-off servers for way too cheap in Germany that one power surge could cost you all your data is pretty absurd to me. No, it makes no sense. If this was the obvious correct path, you would have companies like Netflix doing it. Why would Netflix, a multi-billion-dollar company, do this wrong? If you genuinely believe it is easier and safer to host VPSs, why is it only random hobbyists and people who have a service with 100 users talking about it ever? I've never seen real production apps talking about this outside of a little bit of stuff that's slowly dying from the DHH camp. Like, I hate to be so direct about this. It's just kind of silly that none of the people building real software are building this way. I've never seen someone proudly bragging that all of their stuff is on Hetzner or is on some random modern VPS solution that doesn't have endless problems or zero users. Like, it's just always the case. Does this mean you should never learn how to do that? No, absolutely not. Everyone should know how to spin up a Linux server and run code on it if you're working on servers for a living. But you should have a general idea of how the pieces work so that you know what you're not dealing with when you move to something like AWS. And no, this isn't because corporations prefer AWS. That is fucking delusional. There are companies that are competing with Amazon that are still building on top of AWS. They're doing it because it's the right balance of capability, price, reliability, and overall functionality. Like, it's just duh. I cannot take anyone seriously who is sitting here saying that AWS, GCP, and Azure are bad bets because you could just use a server. None of these people are building real software. I'm sorry. Sure, you can sit here and shit on me all you want and say, well, Theo, you could put T3 chat on a VPS, a really big one, but yeah, maybe. And the moment we have slightly too many users, we're screwed, or we have to start putting a Kubernetes layer in front to distribute it. Fun. By the way, Mahmoud here made a great post questioning why someone would deploy their app to a VPS in 2025. As an engineer at Railway, which is one of the few companies that is actually hosting their own bare metal. They've been moving everything over to their own servers recently. They are kind of like modern Heroku. Great company, have a lot of friends there. What's funny with Railway is that they're the company that should be saying this, because to an extent, they're letting you host VPSs. But they have, as many have, built a much better abstraction on top because doing the exact same management and configuration everyone else has to do makes no fucking sense. None at all. And even a company like Cloudflare, which is basically essential if you have a CDN and DDoS protection, which, by the way, if you're hosting on a VPS, you fucking need DDoS protection. There is no world in which you're hosting on a VPS and dealing with insane loads without something in front to protect it. And if you have Cloudflare as the layer in front preventing DDoS attacks, there's a very good chance that layer is going to go down at some point because it has in the past due to the fact that they're using GCP still for the storage for things like KV. Yes, really, there are parts of Cloudflare that are using GCP still. They're working on their way off it as far as I know, but it's still there. So everyone is vulnerable. If your service is not vulnerable to outages like this, not saying you're in us-east-1, but if your service is not vulnerable to something like this, your service isn't real, or you're just wrong. Period, point blank, end of story. Everyone is vulnerable to something in their chain failing, or they don't have a real fucking chain. This is not a time for us to be like, well, maybe we should move to servers. No, that's just fucking delusion. It's cope. It's people who don't know what they're talking about. It's a bunch of web devs hosting shit in PHP that pretend they know how services work. I'm sorry, just not the real world. That all said, we should probably stop doing everything in one region. Surely AWS does have multiple data centers within their region, and if any one fails or has an outage, the other two are probably fine. But the problem here isn't that the service within AWS fails, not that the data center went down, is that the layer that routes to that data center did. If anything, I would argue that it is incredibly impressive that there is an outage that can occur at the DNS level that only hits and affects one region with AWS, because this region has multiple data centers. If one data center failed, things happen. If they all fail, worse things happen. But if you have DNS routing between those things and that fails, but it only fails in East-1, that's almost a fucking miracle. The fact that only one piece of AWS went down for this is genuinely impressive. And generally speaking, the fact that AWS outages like this are so expensive is more incentive for them to keep it from happening in the future. So many companies hide from the fact that they have outages like this. Amazon can't. Amazon lost billions upon billions of dollars because of this outage. Do you seriously think they're going to just let it happen again? That they're not going to put a shitload of guards in place to prevent this from happening again? This outage made the internet more resilient than it's ever been, and that's going to continue to be the case. AWS is going to invest more heavily than they ever have in resilience for these things, because otherwise people will actually move. And also, their own businesses will lose money because Amazon was down for a lot of this as well. It's genuinely silly to me to think that this is a reason to move off of AWS. Like, what? Ugh. Cathode Ray Dude is one of my favorite YouTubers. He did a great video on TiVos recently and how the company's slowly dying. And NMG just dropped a quote from him here that I think fits here perfectly. How dare they ask me to pay money for a well-designed, purpose-built device that does a great job at a specific task that I value highly? What fiends? I'll show them by spending the same amount of money and vastly more time and effort making something that works almost half as well. Yeah, this is the problem. This is how I feel whenever somebody talks about things that have to do with not using AWS. Like, oh, cool, so you're going to go reinvent everything yourself. Let's see how that goes for you. Let me know when you can actually work on your software again. I have seen people sharing this and a bunch of memes in a similar format, claiming that companies like Vercel are, in the end, just AWS wrappers. Even Netflix is just an AWS wrapper. Do you know what C++ is? Give you a hint. It has to be compiled to assembly. Everything's a fucking wrapper. I am so tired of this goddamn argument. The entirety of technology is wrappers on top of other things. Welcome to software. There's almost nothing that is that bottom level. Literally every single thing we work in and touch that is worth using is in abstraction. Companies selling shirts aren't creating their own fabric. Engineers writing C++ are not writing their own assembly. Services giving you access to servers are not going to host their own servers unless, and this is the key, unless there's a really good specific reason to do it. When a company is making infrastructure, like Vercel, and they choose to work with AWS, what that tells me isn't, oh, they're going to overcharge me for an AWS wrapper. What it tells me is that the problem space they choose to solve in is different from the problem space that AWS is solving in. And rather than try to reinvent all of the hard work and billions of dollars that AWS has spent to make incredible, scalable servers for a reasonable price, they decided to take advantage of that existing work and build on top of it. This actually makes for a really good transition to point 3, why breaking up Amazon is stupid. This is the post that inspired my whole rant. According to Elizabeth Warren, If a company can break the entire internet, they are too big, period. It's time to break up big tech. As the community note correctly states here, AWS is not a monopoly. It represents 30% of the web. The fact that 30% of the web feels so big is pretty wild, but it does feel like so much was down. Is it bad that one company going down can affect other things? Perhaps, but that's how supply chains work. When the Suez Canal was blocked, the entire world was put on hold. Is it okay for a company to own something as valuable as the Suez Canal? If there was only one, probably not, but there isn't. There are so many options. There are arguably too many options for hosting. I would argue the opposite of this point specifically. Personally, I think it's pretty fucking cool that some random vibe coding kid has access to the exact same infrastructure as Netflix. That is the magic of what's happened here. Because companies like AWS have to put so much work in to build the products that they're building. To build AWS is such a complex thing to do. They decided early on through an Amazon mandate through Jeff that anything that was being used by multiple teams should be built in a way that it could be abstracted and sold to external customers because there was so much work being redone internally. They realized at Amazon, oh, we have 4 teams that are trying to find a way to store files. What if we made a generic solution for storing files and let all of the teams use it? That innovation they made was awesome. And if that innovation is a thing they were forced to keep internally because they're scared of being broken up if they sell it, then the entire ecosystem is going to slow down because now every single fucking company has to reinvent file uploading. Please explain to me in detail why that would be a good idea, why we need to reinvent file uploading again and again. Trust me, this is not a fight you want to take with me in particular. Anyways, it's pretty cool that anybody can use the exact same infra as the biggest companies in the fucking world. That I have the same level of reliability, of scalability, of service like functionality as companies like Amazon do. Because instead of them taking all of that work they put into every single service and refusing to let anyone benefit from it, they're doing the opposite. They're buying companies like Twitch, my old employer, taking their video infra that was exclusively usable by Twitch, turning it into a service and selling it to Twitch's competition like Kick. That's awesome. I think that is great. This is one of the few times that you can point at and with almost no argument against it, say capitalism is working well. Companies had incentives to build these things for themselves, and then due to the nature of markets, they had incentive to sell those things to others. That's a good thing. The fact that we all don't have to go reinvent the concept of storing files is a really positive win for the entire ecosystem. It's part of what makes the whole tech world as awesome and productive as it is. We can build on top of the hard work of others. If every single service, if every single app, if every single vibe-coded thing on Replit had to be built using a bunch of things that they rolled themselves instead of building on top of these layers, we would all still be writing fucking assembly. This is all on top of the fact that it's not a goddamn monopoly. There are multiple options. There's all the VPS bros shutting themselves, but there's also Google Cloud, which I have my issues with. It's the reason people don't like it as much. Azure, which is making almost as much money as AWS now because they charge insane licensing fees. We're also using Azure for a bunch of our inference right now for T3 Chat. There's also smaller companies I've been showcasing like Railway that I think are really cool too. There's a surprising number of businesses relying on one specific region in AWS because it's useful. It's a good thing to rely on, and the reliability tends to be pretty solid. I'm going to go a bit of a different direction here and talk about this. My new iPhone. This is the iPhone 17 Pro Max. It's expensive. I'm not going to say otherwise. But the fact that pretty much every iPhone user is on the same effective device with like a plus or minus 10 to 20% performance gap is actually a really cool thing. The fact that a billionaire doesn't have a way more expensive version of a phone than somebody who's making $50K a year is good. Look at almost every other market outside of tech. Look at cars, look at houses, look at vacations, look at flights, look at everything else in the world. The version somebody with a median wage uses is fundamentally different from the version that a big billionaire class person uses. I think it's nice that that's not always the case and that you can't spend way more money to get a way better iPhone. The best iPhone in the world is like $1,600. You cannot get better than that. And the only difference is that there's more storage. Like, this is cool. I really like the fact that something like AWS allows for you, me, and billionaires to have the same exact goddamn infrastructure. That's awesome. This is capitalism winning. It's driven the costs down so much and the quality of product so high that there's no reason to get something bigger and fancier. You can get abstractions around the best thing right now. You can get things that make the DX better with AWS, things like Vercel. They're not paying me. I just like using them. But we're all building on top of the same thing because that one thing has effectively become a commodity. The same way that you and I drink the same water and you and I own the same iPhone, you and I use the same servers on AWS or on Google or on Azure even. That's a fucking win. And the fact that you can buy a $600 iPhone right now and have the same quality of experience minus, I don't know, maybe the camera slightly worse than on my $1,400 to $1,800 one, cool. That's good. If you need more, get more. Who cares? This is a good thing. And it is genuinely annoying to me that when any little thing goes slightly wrong, the response is, never should anyone use this again. We should be breaking this up. It should be illegal. It's terrible. It's bad. It's awful. I'm not saying AWS doesn't have problems. I'm certainly not saying Apple doesn't. I could rant about the state of the App Store for hours. In fact, I have in the past. Check out my other videos. What I'm saying is that it's pretty cool that the level of entry is the same for everyone and that we have successfully made good enough primitives to work at almost every different scale, and that people who are independents working on small projects are benefiting from the same new infrastructure and powerful things that are being built by AWS as companies like Netflix are. That's a good thing. Imagine a world where Netflix can spend billions of dollars building infrastructure primitives and then keeps it to themselves, and no one else is allowed to use those, and you have to build it yourself to compete at all. The reason that there are these small projects that are competing with big companies now, the reason a 100-person team can be a real threat to a 100,000-person company, is because AWS has given access to everyone. All of this said, the fact that Amazon uses their profits from AWS to discount things on Amazon.com to squash competition, that might be worth talking about a bit. Conversation for another day. The death of diapers.com through Amazon subsidies is a thing that is actually monopolistic and is worth talking about. But AWS being a useful service has nothing to do with that. So Warren, please, for the love of all things American, don't say this, or at the very least, talk to somebody technical that isn't a VPS bro before saying something stupid like this in the future. This makes all of us look bad. In the words of Gurgley here, AWS didn't break the entire internet. Companies that decided to build non-resilient systems depending on one single cloud region, East-1, broke themselves. Notice how X, Google, Meta, Shopify, etc. were all fine. Breaking up AWS would solve nothing. That's all I got on this one. Let me know what y'all think, and until next time, go deploy a VPS on Hetzner, I guess.